Good evening, Stillwater. Welcome to the town hall session for the meeting where we'll talk about our rate studies that we've done over the last several months. I'm Candy Starring, the engineering director, and I'm going to introduce our team members that are on the panel tonight and tell you some opening notes, and then I'm going to pass it off to Brad Stewart to give us the rules of the evening. First of all, the presentations we're going to be giving tonight are on our electric utility, our water utility, our wastewater utility, and our stormwater utility. And we're going to show you at the end of it some of the example bills that people might be seeing from these utility changes if they're accepted by council. I want to remind everyone that although this was initially planned for only water, wastewater, and stormwater, we have added electricity utility to the evening, so you all can ask questions on any of the utility rate studies you've seen over the last month. I wanted to say we do rate studies because we want to make sure we understand the cost of service that we're providing to the public so that the costs we're charging are fair and so that the equity among our customer classes are also fair so that one is not subsidizing the other. We hired outside consultants to do these studies for us on all counts: water, wastewater, stormwater, and electric, and our staff will be presenting parts of those presentations for the evening. If you wanted to see the full presentations, you can go back to the council meeting where we presented those. We looked at 10-year comparisons, and we also, for other cities, we did 10-year projections for these rates. Our council would never adopt 10 years, but we want to look at the next 5 years after our first 5-year recommendation so we know what that looks like. And part of that reason is because the current council cannot bind the next council to any agreement, so they're able to change in the future. I'm going to turn it over to, I'm going to do introductions first. To my right, I have two of our counselors. I have Counselor Kevin Clark and Counselor Tim Harden. And to my left, starting at the far left, I'm going to introduce our staff who will be doing presentations and answering questions tonight as well. Dana Maddox is our Director of Customer and Billing Services. Christy Cluck is our Finance Director. Bill Millis is our Deputy Director of the Engineering. Zach Henson is our Stormwater Manager. Lauren is our Electric Utility Director. And I'm Candy Starring again. I'm going to pass it over to Brad for the rules of the evening.
Yes, good evening. My name is Brad Stewart. I'm the IT director here at the City of Stillwater. Tonight I'll also be serving as the moderator for this town hall, so I have that privilege. We try to set these town hall meetings up in a format where we could provide information to you as well as hear your questions and feedback from you. We really want to hear your voice. We'll be making some presentations, as Candy mentioned, at the beginning of our time here. And then at the end of our time, we'll open it up to question and answers. During that question and answer time, please go to the microphone on the stand and ask your questions or give us any feedback you'd like to. If you need to leave early before the question and answer time starts, feel free to go to the table at the back of the room and write down a question on the note cards. You can hand that to me and I'll be happy to ask your question to the panelists on your behalf. If you're seeing this live online on our YouTube channel and you'd like to participate by asking a question, we really need you to go to the Zoom meeting in order to do so. If you could go to stillwaterok.gov/rate study, you'll see a link to this Zoom meeting there. Join the meeting. There'll be a Q&A button once you're joined, and you can feel free to ask any question there, and we will ask it to the panel. All the presentations and the information that you're going to hear tonight and in previous nights, you can find on our website at stillwaterok.gov/rate study. And I think we're now ready to begin with the presentations. Lauren?
Good evening. Lauren Smith, Electric Utility Director. I'd like to start with looking back at kind of where we've come from and where we're at now and where we're wanting to head in the future. In 2020, we completed an electric cost of service study similar to this one. At the time, we determined there would be no overall rate increase. Revenues would be adjusted between class based on cost of service, and that would really be a revenue neutral recommendation. Shortly after that, we made all those recommendations, the pandemic hit, and our world got turned upside down, so no action was taken. Also, during that time, from FY19 to FY22, we suspended our CPI increases, our Consumer Price Index increases, which were totaling up to about $6.03 million over that time of revenue loss. So a couple of key events that have taken place since then. Our revenues have remained flat. We've had a loss of industrial load. Of course, cost increases due to inflation, wholesale power, general fund transfers, labor, health insurance, and materials. Supply chain lead times have also increased significantly. We've had a need to draw from available fund balances, and it's causing our rating agencies to begin to become concerned. This graph shows really a trend of our rates from 2018 to 2022. You can see that in the purple color, that's our base rate, and those have dipped a little bit during the COVID event, and then they barely recovered to 2018 levels in 2022. The turquoise and the dark purple represent our PCA, our production cost adjustment, which is basically a pass-through to pay for fuel in the SPP. So those are funds that aren't revenue that's not deployable. And you can also see that our loss of industrial load since 2019, which is significant. One big driver as well has been the Consumer Price Index. Here you see the kind of the squiggly line is the actual. You can see that it peaked around 9% and is down to about 3%, 3.4 I think last month. But what's really affected us is this 12-month rolling average of it. We're still seeing those effects. Also, one of the cost increases has been our general fund transfer. You can see that in the purple, we're showing the past up until what we've projected in 2024, and then the turquoise line is increased into the future. This slide is very telling. This is what we're paying for distribution materials. You can see that a 500 kVA pad mount transformer, 244% increase, which is just significant. A lot of to the right, you see pad mount 50 kVAs. These along with a lot of 37.5 kVA transformers, what we used in subdivisions, and so they're just really out of control. So. This is a slide showing the available fund beginning balances. You can see that our increased draws from it have affected the general fund and SUA operating fund. Some of this was intentional, but this isn't sustainable for us, this sharp downward trend. We're going to have to level this out and start building those reserves back up. Rating agency concerns, we are reviewed every year by Standard & Poor's. They claim a decline in fixed charge coverage ratio, FCC, due to higher purchase power cost, Winter Storm Uri cost, high transfers from the SUA to the city's general fund, and lack of base rate increases from 2019 to 2022. This may result in a downgrade in rating, which will affect our interest cost in the future. So we did a study, a very significant study, analyzed a lot of data. This depicts, I really want to focus on the percents down here at the bottom. If we did nothing with rates, this is what our deficit will continue to grow to be, and that is a cumulative loss of approximately $21 million if we did nothing. So we began to look at a rate design that would update a lot of our rates, fix a lot of our rates, increase the fixed charge to align with cost of service, eliminate declining block rate billing structures, eliminate seasonal demand charge differentials, align commercial or GS class with peers and cost of service, and we're proposing to implement these new rates January 1st of 2024. So if we implement those rates as designed, you can see that we've balanced our budget between our expenditures and our revenues, and our plan is to roll out these increases over the next 5 years. So the proposed rates, these next three slides give you an idea what the impact would be to an average residential customer. We design rates around average customer usage in each class. And you can see the slow and steady increase here. Director Cluck will have some more telling slides at the end that will show holistically all the changes, all the rate changes that we're recommending and what those impacts look like. And they're a really good presentation she does there. So. This is a proposed rate for the general service class that I mentioned. You can see their rates actually come down. This class was identified as needing to be significantly moved closer to its cost of service rate. This is a power and light customer of ours, and you can see that they're kind of flat as well. So with that, I will pass the torch over to Bill Millis.
Okay, apologies for the delay. I'm Bill Millis with the Engineering Department. And I want to talk about our water and wastewater rate analysis. As Candy said, this is performed by a consultant. And we look at a 10-year forecast so that we're looking long-term. When you're building infrastructure that lasts 50 to 100 years, you want to make sure you're thinking and looking long-term, although we would only be proposing a 5-year plan for the actual rate plan. We want to determine the revenue required to keep the utility running, to maintain the infrastructure, to provide the operating and capital needs, and then develop rates that meet those operating expenses, but are also equitable among the customer classes. Basically, those classes are retail, wholesale, and raw water. This slide depicts the 10-year capital plan that we developed as part of the rate study. And there you can see totaling up in each of the different upcoming 10 fiscal years, the total capital need for the water and wastewater utilities together is about $425 million, $450. And then when it's escalated out for inflation over the 10-year plan, you can see the total bottom right is $596 million. So that's about 80% water and 20% for wastewater. And that's also kind of helps identify that for water, the capital investment and reinvestment that needs happening are big drivers in what the rate design needs to be. Here we have, based on the cost of service study, essentially the nutshell version of the cost of water. So on the left is in FY24 currently, and then on the right would be FY28. And you can see that for our retail customers, which means all residential and commercial customers on the municipal system, cost now is approximately $8.50 per 1,000 gallons, and by 2028, that'll be $18 per 1,000 gallons. You can see on the rows below that the costs to deliver water, to get the water from Kaw Lake, treat it and deliver it to rural customers and to wholesale customers is higher than it is for the retail customers. And there's ranges there because for example, some of our wholesale customers have different situations than others, and we'll get into that a little more later. But you can see that both of those costs also will increase, obviously, over the next 5 years, as will the cost to raw water, the cost to deliver raw water. Our current rates won't support these costs over time. So thus we have, this slide is a summary, again, of the 10-year capital improvement program plan, but down at the bottom, summarizing the average water increases and the average wastewater rate increases over the 10-year plan. So we've worked with two scenarios. Scenario one includes essentially the need for the water and wastewater systems, which means the backlog of capital improvements is really what drives that. And that's an average water rate increase of 14%, an average wastewater rate increase of 6%. The scenario two is a backed off scenario that does not meet all the water and wastewater infrastructure needs. But we're working on options to make that scenario or somewhere near there be more viable. But that one has essentially a 13% annual water rate increase and 6% on wastewater. So for wastewater, the two scenarios are the same. Also would like to note here on this one, the third and fourth rows that says ARPA, that's COVID-related government grants, and the federal earmarks are, we really have to thank our Senate contingent for helping us. So there we've got almost $19 million identified that we can use towards our capital needs. So city staff and management, and with the assistance of our legislators and state and federal, have been searching for money to help pay for these things we need. So we're not just putting it all on the ratepayers. We're trying to turn over every rock we can to find ways to help pay for the needed infrastructure. Here we have under the next few slides I'll show you are all based on scenario one, just to keep it simple and not be jumping back and forth. But this is the base rate structure for retail and rural customers. So that's the current on the left. And it runs out to 2033, again, just for planning, but there in the middle is FY28. So then we would reevaluate the rate structure. And so right now we'd only be looking at what's between now and 2028. So you can see the base rate, which is, that includes no usage. That's essentially the monthly cost to have a meter and to have the water available at a home or business. What we've tried to do, which is the industry norm, is to have the customer's fixed cost based on the utility's fixed cost. So that's what it costs us to have the infrastructure, to have the meter at your home with the ability to serve you the water, whether it's used or not. And you can see the base rate almost doubles between now and FY28 for the 3/4 inch meter all the way up to the 6-inch meter. This next slide has the volumetric rate. And again, it almost between now and FY28 almost doubles. The tiers are only for the 3/4 and 1-inch meter. Tiers are established to allow customers to conserve and thus minimize their expenses for water usage. And let's see, I've said, yeah, they almost double again. And that's the gist of this slide. Here now we have the wholesale rates, our current rates on the left. And you can see we have 4 major wholesale customers and then 2 raw water customers at the bottom. On the wholesale, it's worth mentioning 2 of the customers, the middle 2, Lone Chimney and Noble County District 2, purchase water at the water treatment plant. And so they pump it directly from there to their systems. And the other two, Payne County District 3 and 51 East, they purchase water out from within our distribution system, which means we have additional expenses to get water to their point of delivery. So it makes sense that those two would pay more for their water. Right now, our rate structure does not reflect that. So one thing we're doing here is correcting that discrepancy, and you would see that those two wholesale customers, their rates are going to increase faster and surpass the other two, because like we said at the beginning, we want the rates to be as equitable as possible between customer classes and within customer classes. I will also note that the study showed us that the wholesale customers currently are not, the retail customers are subsidizing the wholesale customers. So the plan is to correct that, and that the wholesale customers overall have like a 20 to 30% rate increase, as opposed to the 14 or 13 that we mentioned for retail customers. Not much to add on the bottom with the raw water customers, other than their rates are increasing quite a bit over the same period of time. They're about doubling or more than doubling over the 5-year period. Here we have the wastewater base rate. Again, increasing over time, but not as more modest increase, the 6% as I mentioned. And this is the base rate just for having sewer service. Now I'll give you a sec to look at that. It's not, looks like $8.80 currently for a 3/4 inch meter, going up to $11.33 by FY28 for a 3/4 inch meter. And so you might wonder about that. The rate for wastewater is based on your water meter. And that the reason for that is because we don't measure wastewater, and it's not practical to measure it. So we base that on the amount of water used during the winter months. So water use during November, December, January, February determines the sewer rate all year round. And here on this table is there's just one tier for wastewater. So this is the one tier volumetric rate for wastewater use. It does go up from $3.57 currently to $4.60 by FY28. And the outside city limit row there is because for wastewater, city code requires a 1.5 multiplier. So sewer customers outside of the city limits pay 1.5 times the rate of customers inside the city limits. This shows just showing some of the same information, but more graphically, and based on this is, again, it's still scenario 1, 3/4 inch meter with relatively low consumption, and won't go into a lot of detail here because Christy's going to be talking about this more later on a unified bill look. But we wanted to show, we recognize that the water increase is the bulk of the overall increase. So I wanted to show you graphically what that increase would look like over time. Down in the numbers, you can see that the current total monthly bill is $80, and in FY28, that's looking at $140 with those 14% annual increases average. Here's the 1 inch meter with 10,000 gallons. I don't remember if you call that a medium or a low user, but just another way to get an indication for some customers of how their bill may change.
That's about my bill right there.
Okay, well, Counselor, your bill is going to go from $140 per month, water and wastewater combined, to $240 a month in FY28 under this proposal. And this is, again, scenario 1, which is the most conservative, because we wanted to keep it simple and talk about one scenario, but also start with the most conservative. And it could get better than that, but no intent of it getting any worse. Here is another important thing that we want to look at always, is see where we stand in comparison with other cities, and not set our rates in a vacuum. We know, so this is, apologize, not real legible here. Sorry, I was trying to zoom in and I'm not managing that. But we've got our current rates on the left, and then from working left to right is our scenario 1, the one we just talked about, and then scenario 2. But after that is Bartlesville, Broken Arrow, Edmond, Enid, Norman, Oklahoma City, Owasso, and Tulsa. This exhibit will be online on the web page that we directed you to earlier, if you want to see it in more detail. But the real takeaway is that we're right there in the middle, some higher, some lower. And we know that some cities, Edmond specifically, they recently passed a rate increase. I don't know if that's reflected in here. We know a lot of other cities are also facing the same situations and also looking at their rates in years moving forward. And our situation is common across the country. Utilities all across the country have infrastructure approaching the end of its useful life, more big infrastructure failures, so they're all having to reinvest and reassess how to pay for that. So we're definitely not alone. This is, okay, the first slide was the 3/4 inch meter. Here's the 1 inch meter. Same main point that we're in between the high and the low of the other cities in Oklahoma. This slide, next steps, contains the consultant's kind of generalized recommendations. He wasn't super specific, and he did recommend a 5-year rate increase. The 3% in January. Water rates are conventionally raised or lowered in July. Lauren mentioned earlier, electric are typically done January 1st, so we usually do water and wastewater in July just to spread out the impact. The consultant's proposal included a separate rate increase this January for water, but we'll evaluate that. Based on the input from these meetings and citizens and customers, we'll look at the consultant's recommendations and modify those before we come back November 6th with the more formal recommendations. He also recommended a 1.5 multiplier for outside city limits customers and rural water system, city-owned rural water system customers. I'll just mention that is not currently part of the rate design that we have, because that's not included in the code. And city code right now has those customers paying the same, and our agreement with Corp 3 that we acquired in 2007 includes that those rates will be the same. So our rate design does not include that, but again, that was a proposal from the consultant for consideration. And that's the end of the water and wastewater discussion, so I'll turn it over to Zach Henson to talk stormwater.
All right, good evening. I am Zach Henson. I'm the Watershed Quality Manager in the Engineering Division, and we're going to talk about the stormwater drainage fee that we currently have. So to start this off, I always want to talk a little bit about what stormwater actually is. Best way to describe that is runoff generated during rain events or snow and ice melts. There is a direct correlation of the amount of runoff generated with the amount of impervious area associated with a property. So as you can imagine, when still water grows, new properties are developed, the amount of impervious area is going to increase, and that is going to increase the amount of drainage that we have to manage. And you can kind of see in the image on this slide, it shows them as two separate systems, and it's very good clarification to understand that the storm sewer system is not connected to the wastewater sewer system. Stormwater does not go to the wastewater treatment plant. It goes directly into our streams, our creeks, localized lakes, ponds, things of that nature. So there's a huge water quality element that goes into this stormwater program that we have to follow with federal and state requirements. The drainage fee was first established in 1997, and it was originally developed to try to generate some revenue to pay for some capital improvements for whenever we have to upgrade our drainage structures or build new drainage structures, or when they simply fail and we have to replace them. And that original fee is what we still charge today, and that is all residential properties are billed $1 flat fee every month, and commercial properties are based on a tiered structure. So you can see in that chart, we have 11 different tiers, and we use the term ERU, which stands for equivalent residential unit. That's how we try to determine how much impervious area a commercial property has, which tier it will fall into, and how much to charge them on a monthly basis. Again, there's been no change to this fee since 1997, so we're still operating on the same budget. We did bring increases, or at least they were considered in 2008, 2009, 2012, 2014, and 2020. However, no action was taken on any of those presentations. The most recent one being 2020, and of course, no action was taken at that time to increase this due to the economic considerations with the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I need to go back one. No. 1 second. So the current fees, you can see here, generate about $310,000 on average per year. And you can see the different funds that goes into. And it's important to note that all of these separate funds are not capable of covering the cost of service alone. So each one of these is going to be subsidized every year by transportation funds, general funds, available grant funding, and public works funding for a lot of the maintenance and upkeep that we use. So we are kind of running a bare minimum program with the budget that we have. In comparison to some of our other cities in Oklahoma, we can see Stillwater here at the very top of this chart in red. The residential per month you can see is $1. That's the lowest in comparison to these other cities. The same goes for the non-residential or commercial fee per month. It basically works out to 50 cents per ERU. And for the city of Stillwater, 1 ERU is equivalent to 5,000 square feet of impervious area. We are the lowest by far. You can see the next larger one is going to be right below us, Muskogee, and their residents pay $296 a month and $3 per ERU. And if you compare that with Tulsa at the very bottom, they charge $980 for their residents and $980 per each ERU for their commercial as well. And several of these have lower ERUs, so that also has a huge impact on how much revenue is generated from their stormwater fees. We performed a stormwater fee assessment, or I should say a consultant performed an assessment for us in 2020. We made that council presentation on November 30th of 2020. That should be available on our website if you care to go back and really get the in-depth presentation from the consultants. Those recommendations were based on these items that you can see on this slide, and it was really more of a cost of service, entirely cost of service. We didn't really include too many capital projects in that assessment, so what they determined for what we needed was just to cover the cost of service of what we actually spend every year just maintaining our systems. The proposed first step increase for this, you can see it comes straight from that 2020 study. That's going to be in the green column on the right, and you can compare it with the blue column, current rates in the blue on the left. So the residential fee would go up to $246, and commercial fees would range from $12.28 up to $135.08 for the highest tier. And future potential rate adjustments that we're considering is a step or percent increase, and that's going to be based on future capital improvement plans that we're going to develop, and that will actually help this fund develop some revenue so that we can start making improvements and not just worry about the maintenance and upkeep of our systems. We want to look at transitioning from a residential flat fee to a tiered fee similar to commercial based on the amount of impervious area for each residential property. That's to make it a little more uniform and fair for all properties. As of right now, you've got a 500 square foot bungalow paying the same price as a 5,000 square foot large residential property. So by using a tiered fee, we could kind of even that out and make it a little more equitable and fair across all customers. We want to consider potential exemptions for public schools, nonprofits, and other organizations of that nature. And we want to consider rate reductions for those who implement low-impact development practices. And that can include rain barrels, rain gardens, the use of pervious materials that would allow that rainwater to infiltrate into the ground rather than running off the property and becoming a drainage situation that we then have to manage. So overall, the staff recommendation at this time was to reevaluate the ERU, change that from 5,000 square feet to 2,500 square feet, which is more in line with the average amount of impervious area for residential properties. Update the residential flat rate to $2.46, and then update the commercial tiered rates per the consultant's recommendation that we saw in the earlier slide. And with that, we will turn it over to Christy.
So I'm Christy Cluck, I'm the finance director, and so now we're going to take a look at some bill examples. And so what I'm going to show you this evening is going to take into account the rate recommendations that you've seen from the other presenters. The water assumptions will be that scenario one that Bill went through. And I'm going to show you several bill examples using different customer classes and then different levels of consumption. Here in a minute, I'm going to start with a look at our residential customers and then move into our small commercial, large commercial, and then end with industrial. For each bill example, I'm going to show you two different slides. So the first slide you'll see is going to be a bar graph, and that is going to show the 5-year implementation of those rate recommendations. And then the second slide is going to be bill screenshots that are going to compare the current bill with the year one rate recommendation. And this is going to look very much like what you receive in the mail. This presentation is also available on our website at stillwaterok.gov/rate study. And I do encourage you to visit the website and look at this presentation in particular, because I'm going to show you a lot of numbers. And it's going to be maybe hard to see on the screen, but maybe easier to digest at a later time. Okay, so the first couple of slides I'm going to spend a little more time on, and that's just to help orient you all to the layout, because the layout is going to be exactly the same for each of the bar graphs that you're going to see. So this first graph is a residential customer with low usage, and this might represent a 600 square foot home with one adult occupant. So at the top of the slide, you'll find the customer class and the level of usage. So in this case, you'll see that residential low usage. Right underneath that, you'll see the level of electric, water, and wastewater consumption that's used to calculate the bills. So in this example, we have 530 kilowatt hours of electricity, 3,500 gallons of water, and 2,900 gallons of wastewater. The bars in the graph from left to right represent the implementation of the rate recommendation. So on the far left, you'll see the current rates, and then each bar going to the right is going to be a different year of rate implementation. Each utility charge is shown in a different color, but it's going to be shown in the same order on each of the bar graphs. So starting from the bottom and working our way up, street sweeper is in dark blue, garbage is in gray, sales tax is in orange, electric is in that peach or salmon color, stormwater is in the green, sewer is in yellow, and then water is in that light blue at the top. Then at the very top of the bars, you'll see the bill total. And then underneath that, you'll see the percent of change from prior year's bill total. Okay, on this second slide, this is a look at the bill itself, but it's going to be using the same assumptions that we saw on the bar graph. So this is our residential customer low usage. The bill on the left is the current rates, and you'll see the word current in red up there at the top of that bill. And then on the right is the first year of implementation of the rates. That happens January 2024. And so you'll see January 2024 in red at the top of that bill. And so here we can see the bill impact. I'm going to try to zoom in here. Okay, so we see amount due of $166.21. And then after the first year rate implementation, we have an amount due of $171.31. So for this customer, that's an increase of $5.10.
Scary.
Yes. Oops. Sorry. $5.10 upon that initial rate implementation. Okay, so now we'll look at a residential customer with average usage. So this might represent a 2,000 square foot home with 2 adults and 2 children. So again, you'll see that consumption totals there at the top. One thing I do want to point out on this slide is the bar on the far left. You'll see it's labeled current blended. And that's because the electric rate recommendation was to eliminate the declining block structure for consumption, which that only impacts the winter months. So in order to provide a apples to apples or as close to apples comparison as possible, we calculated a blended summer-winter rate for the current column. So throughout the presentation, anytime you see that current blended label on that first column, just know that that's blending the summer and winter rate, and that's indicative of the declining block rate structure being eliminated for that customer class. So here's the side-by-side comparison of the bill for that same customer with a year one impact estimated at $15.75. And here we have a residential high usage customer. This might represent a 2,300 square foot home with 2 adults and 2 teenage children. And so you can see kind of the trend as the rates are implemented. And I do want to point out that as the bill total is increasing over the course of the 5 years, you can see that the electric charges remain relatively flat, and most of the increase is related to the implementation of the water rates. And then here's that side-by-side bill comparison for the residential high usage customer. One other thing I want to point out on the bill comparisons is over here on the left-hand side where it says 3/4 inch meter, that's noting the water meter size. And as Bill talked about in his presentation, there is a different fixed charge for water and wastewater based on that water meter size. So now we're looking at a small commercial, low usage customer. This might represent a nail salon, a pawn shop, or a small auto body shop. And you can see in this graph that the overall bill impact over the course of the 5 years is relatively flat. And this has to do with the realignment of the electric rates to better reflect recovery of the cost to serve the commercial class. So there's a bit of a decline in the electric charges, and the offset to that decline is the increase in the water charges. So as we go through the commercial graphs, you will notice a similar trend. Here's the side-by-side bill comparison. So year one bill impact for this customer class is just 65 cents. Here we have a small commercial customer with average usage. This might represent a hair salon, a dispensary, or small office spaces. And again, we see that same trend of very flat overall impact to the bill over the course of the 5 years. Here's the side-by-side bill comparison. And I will point out here, here we see this customer has a 1-inch water meter, which is going to come with a higher charge, fixed charge for water and wastewater than the 3/4 inch meter. Here's a small commercial customer with high usage. So this might represent a small restaurant or cafe. And as we're aligning the electric rates to better reflect cost of service, for this particular class of customer, we're actually seeing a decrease in that customer's bill over the course of the 5 years. Then again, just the side-by-side comparison of the year one rate implementation. And the impact in year one is estimated at $79.67 for this customer. But then as we saw in that previous graph, in years 2 through 5, there's projected to be a decrease in this customer's bill. Now we're moving into the large commercial customers. This is low usage. This might represent a mid-sized restaurant, convenience store, or a retail store. And again, very flat over the course of the 5-year rate implementation. In the side-by-side bill comparison, this customer we see has a 1-inch water meter, and bill impact in year one is estimated at $118.44. There's a large commercial customer with average usage. This could be a car dealership or a larger restaurant. And there's some ups and downs here, a little bit of a spike in first year, 5.7% increase, but then it's relatively flat as we implement the remaining years of rates. And then our side-by-side bill comparison, this customer has a 2-inch water meter. And again, that fixed charge goes up as that meter size goes up. Their impact in year one is estimated at $308.74. And then our large commercial customer with high usage. And this is going to be our big box stores, large restaurants, or our public school locations. And again, being a commercial customer, and as we implement that realignment of electric rate structure to better reflect cost of service, we see the bill impact over the course of the 5 years is relatively flat. And then side-by-side bill comparison with an impact to this customer in January 2024 of approximately $481.66. And then finally, our industrial customer. And this resembles a little closer to the residential customer and seeing those steady increases over the course of the 5 years. And the side-by-side bill comparison. All right, and now I think Brad's going to come up and show us a neat tool that we have available.
Very briefly. So the last thing we wanted to show before we get to the question and answer portion is just a tool that we wanted to give our customers out on our website so that they could do a rate estimator on their bill. So this again is on our stillwaterok.gov /rate study. You'll find this tool. You can simply look at your bill and enter your consumption usage. So in this box, you would enter your kilowatt hours, and I'm going to put 400 kilowatt hours in. And then in the water, you could choose your 3/4 size or 1 inch size meter, and then your gallons of usage. And then the same for your wastewater off of your bill, just entering in the gallons of usage. And then when you hit calculate, it's going to estimate for the next 5 years what our proposed rates would look like for you. So that's a tool that's out there. Feel free to use that and get a little better feel for what this or how this will impact you. I think now we are ready for question and answer. So feel free to step up to the mic and address the panel, and we'll answer your questions.
Henri War, 1911 East Kelsey Lane. I have a whole bunch of questions, but since I don't want to monopolize the time, am I limited to just one question at a time, or
You're not limited to just one question.
just this last slide where you basically have commercial customers with their electric rates flat versus residential that's basically covering a lot of the bulk of the increases. It sounds like there's something to do with cost of service definition. I'm just wondering exactly how do you define cost of service for commercial customers?
So how do we define, say it again now?
Well, your consultant thinks that commercial customers are overpaying for cost of service.
Yep.
And residential customers are underpaying. So that's why she shifted rates to the residential customers and took it away or kept the commercial customers flat, whereas commercial customers are consuming tens of thousands of kilowatt hours, and residential customers like poor old me, go 500 to 1,000 kilowatt hours a month. And
Yeah, and I think the idea there is to decrease cross-subsidization between our customer classes, and that everybody pays their fair share, pays their cost to serve. And so the study identified those areas where some were, some weren't, and we just tried to level those out.
I guess cost of service, in some ways, you could define it as how much electricity you use. So a person or an entity that uses more electricity should pay more for the fixed, or bear more of the burden of some of your fixed costs.
Yeah, so...
And it doesn't seem like that's what's happening.
Yeah, well, I can I'm pretty confident that the study's done well and professionally.
I'm sure that's true. but I'm
You've
just
got
saying that-
fixed cost for every customer class, and the rates were designed to recover those costs.
It just seems very strange that commercial customers, like a Walmart, would be paying the same flat electrical rate over that period of time, which is just, it doesn't even cover inflation.
Yeah,
So that's what's so strange.
yeah, yeah. I think that we found during the study that some of those classes were not aligned with their true cost to serve, and that's what we're trying to do here is align all those costs.
Some real quick, easy questions to answer. What were your wholesale rate assumptions for your electrical rate?
Right now, we're about 7 cents kilowatt hour.
And for your study, is there an increase over the time, or what is that rate increase?
We're projecting a little of both. It's variable with the fuel and the SPP, so it kind of depends on GRDA's PCA.
Yeah.
And so we're projecting in the next 6 months, I think that, in the next year actually, that PCA is slowly going to decline. But there's something kind of wonky happening in the future years where gas prices start to go back up. So it's very dependent on that.
But so, yeah, I guess in your you have the rate study where it goes through all those assumptions and that we can see exactly how.
Yeah, so the final result will be a report, a very detailed report on the study, and that will be made public.
Okay. How do we compare benchmarking for electric rates? How do we compare against other cities?
I actually have some slides I could pull up. If you
Yeah,
want.
that'd be interesting.
That were on the original presentation that Lisa Vetter presented on. Let's see here. Let me see here. May have to find them for a second. They're down in here somewhere. So, am I on?
While you're pulling that up, I just want to remind any viewers on our YouTube channel that if you have questions to ask, please join the Zoom session and hit the Q&A button. And you can find that Zoom session online at stillwaterok.gov/rate study.
Way to fill the gap, man. Yeah. So here's a comparator that we showed at one of the meetings, and so this is our residential compared against the co-op here, Claremore, Edmond, Kiamichi, Norman, Ponca City, Oklahoma Gas and Electric. These are snapshots today, and so we can't tell what they're going to do in the future. We're aware of a lot of these cities that are either in the process of doing a cost of service study or they're preparing to. We're not in this alone. The whole market is affecting all these utilities, so we couldn't get a real feel for where they're at in the future. So you can see here our proposed is about $144. This is for a resident average monthly 955 kilowatt hour, and so that's residential. This is commercial general service, and so you can see that we're a little higher than some there. So that should trend
I
down.
looked up some of the residential rates for OG&E and PSO, Edmond, and when I looked at their rate structure, it seemed like they were still a few pennies less than what we're charging right now on the electric bill that we have. It looks like we're getting like we're being charged like effectively up to 14 cents a kilowatt hour after you put in the PCA and the storm recovery.
Yeah, and so it's real tough sometimes to compare. You know, we all have different costs to serve. You know, we all have different systems and a different dollar cost to serve. So sometimes looking at comparators is good, but sometimes it's hard to tell because we don't know what's going on in their town. And like I said, you know, a lot of them are preparing to do cost of service studies and move right in this direction as well. So.
But we are being charged at around 14 cents a kilowatt hour right now.
Yeah, we sure are about 14 cents, and that's really
And
primarily.
do we expect that to go up, like, you know, in that linear or whatever fashion over the next 10 years?
Actually, looking at some of the GRDA, PCA trending that we're seeing, that we saw just today from their meeting, their PCA is projected to drop over the next 8 months. And so that should really help offset us and actually bring our electric rates down. That's a big driver for us.
I think Robin Cornwell asked this question a couple of days ago, but the distributed generation rate, is there changes to that?
Yes, every rate will be affected. Yeah, there will be slow, steady increases to all.
You mean in the fixed charge or
The service availability fee and then the customer charge for residential. Yeah, and that's a great rate we have. We're at right now we've got 31 DG net metering customers. We've got 10 in the queue, in the approval queue, and every week we're signing
it's
DG
a great
agreements.
bargain for anyone that has EVs in their garage.
Yeah, so
It's a no-brainer to do that if you have an electric vehicle. Finally, I won't hog the entire evening, but what are the bond rates that you assumed for your capital improvements?
I will
for
defer to our
financing?
finance director for that.
Because obviously you need to know or make some kind of an assumption in order to be able to
Yeah, we
calculate
used 5%.
5% for the entire. I'm assuming that these bonds are like staged over time,
Yes.
but you're just assuming a flat 5% right now. I
Yeah.
see. And is that
Yes.
pretty? That's a going rate right now, or is that something that's?
Yes, that we feel like that's a realistic and conservative rate.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Steve Hallgren, I have a couple of questions that continue from what the discussion we just earlier had. It seemed like the decision was made to change the rates for commercial versus residential. It was a pretty big change. This,
All rates were affected.
well, but the rates will go down for commercial and up for residential.
Yeah, they're going to align better with their cost to serve.
So why were they so far out of line before?
That's a great question, and I don't know if I have a really good answer for you. I think some of it's probably legacy, and that, as we rolled through this study, it really, popped out at us that these were, these really looked out of line, and so we made the decision to remedy that.
So you say we made a decision. Who's we?
We, as the team that worked on the study, and city manager, and
So do you have to go to the city council to get approval for that?
no, well, we will get approval for this rate study. We're going for on the 6th, I think.
Yes. Approval has not been given yet. We are in the
Okay.
middle of the studies and presentation to public, and when staff is ready to make a recommendation, we'll take it to council, and it will be up to them whether or not they accept it or propose something different.
Well, it seems like something that deserves a little bit better explanation, because the comments you've made so far are just kind of hand-waving, like, we looked at it and thought it was bad, so we fixed it.
Yeah, I apologize if I'm not answering the question.
stands.
Yeah.
Why was it originally so,
Yeah.
so such a discrepancy? And is it a strategic or a policy decision of the city to change it? If it is, it'd be worth being a little more transparent about it and getting that word out.
One option is watching what was the time when Lisa presented?
It was in September 25th.
September 25th, because I have a vague memory that she mentioned that it's kind of it was set at one point, and we think at one time when we're doing our cost of service, we set it right. But as time passes and adjustments are made to the system and where people are using electricity, it kind of got out of whack. And so she looked at it and she's bringing it back into the right place, where it's the fairest.
You say she.
Lisa Vetter did our electric study.
Yeah, she's our professional consultant.
Okay.
But
Well,
she
I
did a-
guess it isn't going to affect me that much, but it doesn't seem very transparent. I mean, the explanation is so far just been kind of hand-waving.
Yeah.
And there are some people going to be affected a lot by it,
Yeah.
and maybe they don't pay, they don't care either, but it just doesn't, it seems like there's a deficiency in the explanation of why was it so far out of whack, and then who made the decision to put it back. A third party hired to do a study made the decision that it should be changed?
No.
Or is this something?
No,
the city
Steve,
council-
that is
I-
not the case.
Yeah.
The decision will be made by the city council.
Okay, so they're gonna get
There
a
has
full
been no
explanation.
decision made. We have a recommendation from a consultant. Staff has worked with that consultant to build a proposal. We are here presenting that data in order to be transparent and accept questions and answer your questions. And the suggestion that we're not being transparent offends me a little bit, Steve.
Did you think we got a full explanation of why was it so far out of whack before? And who made the decision to change it?
No one has made any decisions to change anything. They have made a proposal that will come to city council, who will
Okay.
make a decision.
Okay, so they will be given more information than we were given tonight, because,
Well-
Staff, well, I'm sure we can go back and look at how the rates were set previously, and we'll be delighted to answer your question.
Right.
We're not prepared to answer it tonight.
okay.
There you go.
Well, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think if I remember the city council trying to make a decision, I certainly couldn't make it based on what was given tonight. And so as a member of the
You-
community, I couldn't make a decision either.
We have not presented the full presentations that were
Okay.
given on September 25th.
So more will be given then.
Well, it was already given.
More was given.
You can tune into our YouTube
Okay.
channel on YouTube and watch that night and listen to her full presentation. It was very detailed.
Okay.
I think you'll get a lot of information
So
and details
so
from
if I go
that.
back and look at that, it'll be fully explained then.
Yes,
There
hopefully.
were a couple of things I didn't, what is the block structure that you were referring to? That's
So
going to be
the-
eliminated?
Yeah, so the declining block rate was for residential. It was for the winter months, and anything over 600 kilowatts of usage, the rate decreased significantly. So it could be looked at, promoting excess consumption instead of conservation. And so it was a rate that was made back in the late 80s, and so it's just really out of date and kind of archaic. So we thought it'd be a good time to straighten those up as well.
Okay, thank you. And the seasonal differential?
Seasonal differential is related to demand costs in those commercial classes and GS between winter and summer.
So those will be eliminated as well?
Those will be eliminated as well. Yeah, they were determined that I think the term out of whack is a good one. I mean, they've just been legacy, and they've been there, and it's time to clean them up and modernize our rates.
Great, thank you. Does the city have the possibility or consider having different rates during the day, for example, when there's peak usages? Is that a possibility? It's something that could be directed towards encouraging conservation?
You bet. I believe what you're referring to is the time of use rate.
Right.
And, we really need to get our advanced meter infrastructure in place first. A lot of these things have, we kind of take baby steps because they're complicated moves. And so a time of use rate is certainly something that we've talked about visiting in the future, but we need to get our AMI, we feel like we need to get our AMI meters in place to really make that happen.
So
Well,
that's,
there's really no way to do it until we have the AMI meters in place.
not a good way.
There's no way to
Yeah.
track it.
Yeah, not a good way.
Yeah.
is there a timeline for that at all, or is it's pretty far out there?
It's really just in the discussion phase right now. Changing rates and designing rates is a long process, and it takes a lot of buy-in. So, short answer is it's on the horizon, but I can't give you a date.
Do you know whether the time of usage policy does that benefit? Does that have any benefit?
The time of use
Does
rate.
it work, actually?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. There's rates can be designed to incentivize behavior, or increase rates at a certain time so people would consume and get off your peak. Those type of things. So
No, I've heard about it. I just never knew whether it really worked, whether it was worthwhile trying it or not.
yeah. We have one customer that's a time of use customer, a large customer, and they seem to. There's been times when they say, "Hey, we're going to make hay when the sun shines," and they run past they don't pay attention to it, but they pay a higher rate during that time. So.
Well, even a residential could do all their dishwashing at night
No,
instead of.
absolutely, yeah. So I appreciate your question, and if you could give Brad your email or email me, I'd be happy to get you a quality response to your question. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate the meeting.
There were kind of two questions asked there. When is AMI? AMI's been approved, has not been implemented yet. Was just approved the expenditure within the last month or so?
Oh, are you asking when AMI was going to be installed?
Well, to do the time usage, we have to have AMI implemented.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about rates, I was just curious if that was something that Stillwater was looking at, and then I asked the additional question, in the past, has it proved to be effective? Is it a useful way to?
Yeah. We currently have 3,000 commercial meters installed, and
Yeah, right around 3,000 commercial. We still have a couple hundred more of those to do, and then we'll start the residential rollout after the first of the year, waiting on meters to arrive.
yeah, that's about 20,000. So we're waiting on meters. So.
Any questions online?
No questions tonight.
Anybody in the audience want to come up and ask some questions?
I'm a little shorter. Robert Sitton. I am got a few questions, but I need to thank Bill first. And Bill did a very good presentation on clarifying the water rates for the Rural Water Corp number 3. And thank you for that, Bill. I did bring that question up before they did their presentation, and the presenters really weren't aware of that because they probably weren't known about it. Bill and I have worked together quite closely on during the rural water stuff, and he clarified that very well. So I want to thank Bill for that. But I want to thank all of you all for being up here and giving time for each one of us so that way our voice is heard. Because many times people want their voice to be heard, and you can see how small a crowd we have. They can have their voice heard if they'll show up. One of the questions I have is from the water report for the next 10 years that shows $596,000 of capital improvements. Will Candy go ahead and have a public list of those so that way the public can see what those are on the horizon? And so then that way we know when hours will be coming up due within that slot time frame.
I have a summary. You want to see a summary right now?
Whenever I was here during that's way too small to really view, but I was just wondering if the
I can make
public
it big. You want to see it?
Can you email it to me?
I will do that. I'll email it to you, yes.
I'll give it to you afterwards. And the only reason why I was saying that word transparency came up, and I believe you all are doing a very good job of being transparent, just like what you said. You're willing to view it, willing to send it out, and I thank you all for doing that. And the reason why I was looking at that is the Stillwater Rural Water Advisory Board, was always looking for those improvements because of our Yoast pressure zone. And so I just wanted to see where ours fell, so in that way we could lift that water moratorium on meters.
Where it falls in the sequence, or whether or not it's in the first 10 years showing up? It does show.
Where it's somewhere.
Yep.
Because of the fact that we've had the contract, just like Bill said, since 2007, and some of those things should have been worked down within the first 10 years, and here we're on 17 years. And
Yeah, we've always operated on priority decisions.
I understand that. Yep. Then another question is, the water report also assumes that funds for the capital improvements may be from grants. And if the city doesn't receive some of those grants, then will some of those proposed rates go higher to cover those non-existent grants? Because, we talk about 2 of those that you had up there, but then the city is always looking for other grants to cover capital improvements. And I heard from the rate study that they did that some of that was worked in.
Yeah, I think it was actually all worked in. Is that correct, Christy? We have, you saw the $19 million there, and then the rates increases are going to cover everything else.
The rest of it.
Right? And so if we get more grants, then we can adjust the rates accordingly. Is that correct, Christy?
That's correct. So what was included in the study was just the known grants, the ones that we've actually received, but we are pursuing other grants. And so the hope is that we will receive those and the rates can actually come down.
Or not reduce the rates and maybe speed up some of the capital improvements?
Yes, that would be another option.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't have a question, but a citizen did provide a comment, so I'll go ahead and read that while we're between questions here. This citizen says, there is funding from the Inflation Recovery Act for increasing the number of trees in cities. An application process is involved. Trees give off oxygen that we need to breathe. Trees reduce the amount of storm water runoff, which reduces erosion and pollution in our waterways and may reduce the effects of flooding. Many species of wildlife depend on trees for habitat. Trees provide food, protection, and homes for many birds and mammals.
I am a fan of trees, actually. We do water lines, and we get a lot of reason to protect trees. If there was a individual that was interested in doing applications for grants for more trees, I think they could get with our community development department and talk with them on some of the opportunities that might be there for the city.
I think I know who that person is that wrote in, and she's brought up the fact that Edmond now has a program where, through the utility company, is providing 1 tree per lot. Come pick up your tree and come plant your tree. I think that's what she's talking about. And that was just recently in the news within the last week or two to go along with Arbor Day.
Yeah. Fabulous. Yes, I know when I'm in a community that really plants trees and has a good focus on trees, it's just a beautiful place to be. Anybody in the audience have any questions or discussion points?
Just, I'm wondering what, when you're calculating these rate increases, you're making some assumptions on your expenses that are forecasted in the future, and I'm wondering, are you just how is that done for each department? Like, do you have some kind of forecast for your staffing, for the expenses that you're that increase at a certain rate? Exactly do you use the CPI? Can someone elaborate on that a little bit?
So we worked very closely with the consultant, each consultant, on those assumptions, and so we did build in inflationary factors, not the same across the board, but we looked at labor and built in an inflationary factor for labor, for health insurance assumptions, for capital. We really looked at each type of expenditure and worked closely with the consultant to develop the most appropriate inflationary factor.
Can you, like for the electric rates, what was assumed there? Would you?
I don't have the specifics in front of me, but I know, like, one of the big expenses, or a couple of the big expenses for electric, is going to be purchase power and natural gas, and so we looked at market rates there.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more on natural gas and purchase power.
Mean, I'd say materials was a big thing. Natural gas is, we recover a lot of that through our energy payment from Grand River Dam Authority. So, but I would say, I would certainly say materials and cost of labor and those kind of things are large drivers.
Right. So those those comprise the bulk of your CPI increases. Those are the components that comprise the bulk of the expense increases over time.
You said CPI, and I'm trying to figure out how you're rolling that in.
I remember in your presentation you said that a lot of the reason why the increases are why there's such a large increase is because of the CPI effects. And I'm just trying to understand what are the
I think when
components that.
in the presentation when we were talking about CPI, that was a look back on what's transpired over the past few years, and part of the explanation as to how we got to the point we are now, because we've seen significant increases in our costs due to the CPI. As far as building in inflationary factors looking forward, that's where we worked with a consultant to develop those assumptions on a look-forward basis.
Okay. Well, final question then. The rate increases that you calculated, has there been any cushion or buffer put into it? Is there some sort of conservatism in the numbers that you've come up with?
For water and wastewater, there's no, other than what our operating budget would normally have for contingency, there's no extra. We have estimates for numerous projects, and as far as the inflation that we applied to those projects, it's about 4% annually. And as you may know, inflation has changed a lot over the last couple or 3 years. So we stuck with 4, and when Christy was talking earlier about the bond rate, there's a lot of uncertainty right now about interest rates and what's coming next. And so I think these experts who do our rate studies make the best decision they can at the time they're doing it. But for water, wastewater, we used 4% inflation for our capital projects over the 10 years.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lauren, I think something that might help answer that question is if you had a pie chart that showed our expenses for electric utilities, how much is for CapEx, how much for labor, how much for purchased energy. And that would let the gentleman understand where we have potential inflation. And I hate pie charts, but I think that might be a good one.
Perfect.
Anybody else have any questions for us? We've got just a little bit under 10 minutes left.
Well, I'd like to ask a question that came up Tuesday night that has not come up tonight. And that this is a proposal, and the question was, what happens if the proposal is not accepted and approved? And I'm kind of point this to Bill. What's the risk to our water future if we don't approve this?
Well, the risk is failures of the infrastructure. Our infrastructure is, parts of it are up to 100 years old, so it takes constant reinvestment in replacement, in repair, in upgrading, and if you follow the news, you see the consequences, almost weekly or monthly of aging infrastructure systems where they have huge line breaks, system failures, things like that. So it's you can't say here's the exact risk and it's going to happen at this day or this time. You just know that the risks increase if you're not taking care of your infrastructure in a timely manner, of more interruptions in service, more significant failures that impact a lot of customers.
And our biggest risk is?
It's between here and Call Lake.
Right.
Our Councilor Hardin's referring to our raw water conveyance system. So our water comes from Call Lake, which is 36 miles away, and we have a pump station and a pipeline from there to our treatment plant. And so that whole system is a big risk or can be a big risk if we don't take good care of it. And that's what we're doing. We have been doing through projects to improve the pump station, make improvements in the pipeline to help overcome its 40-year age and make it perform better and last longer into the future. But that's something that we have done in the past. We're working now. David Barth, who's in the audience, just completed a project upgrading the cathodic protection system to protect the pipeline from corrosion. We have future planned projects and need to do more to help make sure that pipeline and conveyance system serves the community when drinking water for the next 50 years.
And we as a city rely on that one pipeline for our entire source of supply for water, correct?
That's right. And that's a big chunk of the 596 million
Call it
total capital
600.
expenses. 600 million. So currently we have program of 175 million for short-term, very necessary improvements at the water treatment plant to the call pipeline and delivery system. And a good chunk of that is developing a secondary supply to Lake McMurtry, by which we could, Lake McMurtry has water rights, and so that provides something of a backup supply, but we also could put call water in Lake McMurtry so that in an emergency, say we have an emergency line break of the call that's catastrophic and makes it unusable, we'd have Lake McMurtry as a backup supply. So that's one of our very important next steps that's actually underway now, designing that project. So when that's in place, then we can actually take down the call line and do preventive maintenance, make improvements to it. And of course, if we have an emergency, we'll be able to be better positioned to mitigate that emergency quickly and with less impact to our customers.
I told someone today that these projects, the Lake McMurtry Reserve Project and the pump station work that we need to do up at Caw Lake, and all these things that we're preparing to do really is our generation doing what was done 45 years ago with the Caw pipeline, right? Making sure that we had what we needed for the future of the city, not just addressing our current needs, but making sure that we had, we're using 7 or 8 million gallons a day, and we can have 50 million gallons a day, right? We have lots of capacity to bring it here, but we have one pipe to bring it down. We have no backup supply, and we can store about a half day worth of water. And so this is us doing what they did back then to ensure the security of our water system for the next 40, 50, 60 years.
Yes, sir, that's exactly right. It's maintaining and restoring that ability and that forward-looking, taking care of the community in condition and capacity, making sure the condition is as best it can be for a 40-year-old pipeline, and then we have a backup because things fail, even new infrastructure can fail, but also addressing the future capacity. As Councilor Clark said, we have 50 million gallons a day of water rights from Caw, but we currently don't have the ability to move that volume of water to Stillwater. Frankly, we don't need it yet, but we want to be prepared and ready as the community grows, as new businesses come in, as being able to tell those potential new businesses, we can accommodate you. And the McMurtry backup system is part of that. It's not only a backup, but it would help us meet our peaks. Mm-hmm. So as we grow and, say, approach the capacity of the Caw pipeline and the Caw pump station, McMurtry would help us meet the peak, and that would allow us to delay building a second pipeline or replacing the pipeline with a bigger one, because the McMurtry source then has that. Right now, our summer peaks are in the 12 to 13 million gallon a day range. As those increase over time, that extra, say right now our pumping capacity is 14 million. Say we hit that 14 million, but we have McMurtry online, it lets us meet anything above that 14 million with water out of Lake McMurtry instead of having to build another pump station or another pipeline.
We're about out of time, but if nobody has any more questions, I do have one more for Zach. So Zach, you and I had a conversation a while back about people that don't live in the floodplain. Why should they be concerned about stormwater?
Sure. So the floodplain, of course, you're at higher risk. There's a lot more risk to your life and property. But every property, whether you're in the floodplain or not, generates runoff. We've all got these impervious surfaces, which just mean a hard surface where the rain doesn't penetrate into the ground. Every property contains those, whether you're a small residential property or large commercial with a giant parking lot. Everybody contributes to it, and therefore it's everybody's problem to help maintain it, because once those pipes start failing, a lot of them are under our roads. A lot of them can exacerbate flooding issues when we have large storms. But I know personally, every time we get big floods or we have some major part of the system go down, we usually have to alter our driving paths. It affects emergency response times, countless other things that it impacts.
Thanks.
We've reached our scheduled time, so I want to thank everybody for coming and all those who joined online. Last reminder that we have lots of information on our website at stillwaterok.gov/rate study. Invite you to go there and check out the information that's provided. If there are questions that you didn't get answered specifically, please feel free to email us at news@stillwater.org. We will get that information to the proper person, that question to the proper person, and we will get your question answered. Again, thank you all for being here, and have a good night.